Wearing the Feed Me With Your Kiss EP t-shirt by My Bloody Valentine today. Hi guys, welcome to the Shoegazer 93 channel, a channel that proudly celebrates itself. And I was watching Premier Guitar 100 guitarist series that they do, where they basically, there's like two hosts and they talk about like the 100 most influential. I think that's what they determine it on, but the 100 most influential guitarists of all time. And Kevin Shields was one of the episodes, and it kind of, yeah, and one of the things that was brought up in the conversation, that they brought a guest on who was like a real big fan. He saw them live and all that stuff, whereas the host didn't know as much as he did. And he brought up a really good point about what does a My Bloody Valentine rehearsal look and sound like. Like what is the process when those four members enter a room with their instruments, and like what is the first thing that happens? It's really interesting, considering that they're a band that they obviously they don't rehearse often. They take huge breaks, years and years we're talking about, of not seeing each other, not making any music, not playing live. Huge hiatuses. Like, how does a band like that just get back into a room and like what do they play first? Like, do they just play Only Shallow round and round again for like half an hour? Because that's what my old band used to do. We used to play Only Shallow all the time, because it's just a really great sequence, really, of chords and that whole dynamic of quiet to loud. Like I said, it's the Smells Like Teen Spirit of shoegaze. It's the quiet to loud dynamic, where the verse is just as important as the chorus itself, and then when the chorus hits, it has more impact because the context of it being after a quieter section, it makes it have more impact. But yeah, it's like, do they do that? They just, Kevin and Belinda, they get the guitar strapped on around their bodies. Debbie Googe gets the bass guitar strapped on. Con sits behind the drum kit. And what is the first bit of action that happens? Because one would assume that sort of Kevin Shields calls all the shots. Like that would make sense. But then you've got like Debbie Googe, who is like, she's quite vocal as well. Like you see interviews associated with Mbv, and like Debbie does talk a lot. She has the responsibility of doing a lot of the interviews on behalf of the band. And then Colm isn't that shy either, and there are interviews where he's talking quite a lot. But Belinda is the quietest one. Judging by the interviews, obviously I don't know their personality from a day-to-day basis. I mean, it could be completely different, but I'm not trying to disfigure anybody here. I'm not trying to get their personalities wrong, but like, judging by interviews, like, Belinda's the shy one, and like therefore I can just imagine her kind of just following Kevin's lead. Not saying that she's, she hasn't got the talent or anything. I'm just saying that she obviously does, but I think she's someone who would just add her guitar last, as because she does a lot of the strumming textures, which is really crucial. You know, backing up Kevin's hurricane guitar, she does the more kind of the sort of strumming that kind of sort of lays the foundation for Kevin Shields to do all the more wacky sounds. So I can imagine sort of Belinda's guitar sort of being added last, just like more of an afterthought, really. Like once all the sort of more key events in the song are like, once they're down. I can imagine Debbie Googe's bass, like, I can imagine sort of Kevin and Debbie being really close. Because I think her bass line's are the secret weapon, and the fuzz that she has on the bass is like another layer to the noise. But yeah, what does it look like? Then you got to think about the vocals as well, because like MBV, like they have all these like cadences that are really unique, like the patterns of how the vocals are set. You know, they come in at like unorthodox times, and the cadences are really well worked out. Especially when Kevin and Belinda are harmonizing, and yeah, it makes me wonder whether they do the vocals first, do they sort the patterns out first, and then they add the guitars and drums to it, and everything else, synths, samplers, or do they do it the normal approach where they got the instrumentation down and then they add the vocals? But I mean, to me, because they're so, the vocal patterns are just so like kind of left field, and you know, it's like where do they make you wonder, like, where the hell did that come from? Like, how do they come up with that? It makes you wonder if they actually write them first, and then they try and match the music to the vocal patterns, the cadences. Yeah, and that's interesting as well. I mean, and who starts first? Does Belinda do most of the singing, and then Kevin decides, you know, whether he's going to sing the song or Belinda is? And yeah, that's another thing. Like, how do they decide on who's singing each song? How do they decide when they're harmonizing together? And that's another thing with Neil and Rachel as well. How do they do that? From Slowdive, and thousands of other bands. But yeah, I mean, the thing is as well is the noise that MBV play at, the volume, the SPLs, sound pressure levels, like they must like build up to that. They must start off quiet and then they build up, like with each go around. They must build up to their normal stage volume, because they just wouldn't be able to communicate if they were at full throttle on amplitude from the start. Then they just wouldn't be able to communicate. So I can't see how. Yeah, they would have to build up to that. They would start off really quiet. But yeah, it's lots of just speculation and but no answers. And that's the problem with MBV. You don't get a lot of answers, because they're just not apparent enough to. They're not omnipresent enough to answer these questions, quite simply. But yeah, let me know in the comments, like, how do you think it goes? Like the moment the four step into a room together, and also, like, another thing to think about before I end this video is, like, you know, do they just play old songs first, or do they, like, you know, when do they decide to make new music? Like, when does Kevin Shields say, like, oh, I've got a new song, guys, and then you know, they all rehearse that, and like, yeah, because I mean it's hard enough getting familiar with the old songs, but when you've been on a hiatus for that long, it's hard enough just remembering how to play the old ones, let alone trying to come up with something new. So yeah, I mean, how do they do that? How do they do that? After those big hiatuses. Let me know in the comments, guys. I think it's a fascinating bit of speculation, really. What happens when MBV step back into rehearsal room? Let me know your thoughts, guys. Cheerio.